Scott Bird.
Kendall Clements.
Kendall, and we're here to talk about our deposits. So when you're vacating, we have a lot of money put down on a property. When do we get our deposit back, and when is it really, when is it required to receive your deposit, and how do we go about getting it? Because we always want it back.
Yep.
One of our goals here at Tenant Solutions is to help retain as much possible of our deposit, for the tenants to retain as much of their deposit as possible. So that's really something we're focusing on quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to go through this and help you to prepare yourselves when vacating and when to expect it back, so you're not up in arms because it's taken longer than what you think.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to understand that a lot of the tenant landlord laws in our various jurisdictions, were created in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, and here we are in 2023, the day of immediacy, where we want it immediately. Yeah. Like, I just left, why can't I get it, right? Why doesn't the landlord show up at the house, pick up the keys, and hand me the check, right? Well, the reality is there's lots of moving parts when a tenant moves out that have to be taken into account. But most jurisdictions give the landlord the requirement that they have up to 30 days to either provide the deposit back in full, or if it's less than a full deposit, a disposition of the deposit with any remainder. Yeah. And sometimes there might even be a disposition with with their handout saying you owe me more because of X, Y, and Z.
It could
right?
be.
There can be those scenarios.
I feel like this scenario is putting a tenant at the mercy of whatever judgment the landlord decides. And I know there's got to be reasons for it, but there's nothing really saying when a tenant checks out that they're what amount they really are going to get back. There's estimates. There should be a breakdown.
There's feelings and estimates.
It's not complete.
Something I hope landlords going forward in the future really work hard to try and give an expectation to a tenant, but at the same time the landlord doesn't have all the answers, and so they can't give absolutes right then and there. And so hopefully as professionals we're working on our communication skills back out of here's what's going to happen. What is that expectation? And so I think it's important as Tenant Solutions to set a correct expectation with our listeners of, well, I've got 30 days, right? Well, can I help move that along faster, right? So I think meeting the landlord of the property to do the walkthrough is helpful, because I think you can start to get a sense of, the landlord says, well, this wasn't a pre-existing condition, I've got to fix that. That might be $100. This wasn't done, I've got to fix that, that's going to be $50. You're going to get something back. I can't tell you what yet, but it's going to be something.
Yeah.
Right?
And the reason why I think a landlord's not giving you an amount is because they don't fully know the extent of what that's going to be.
Yeah.
They don't know what the contractor's going to be faced. When a contractor goes to do a repair, they may run into something else that they didn't know, and so it might be a little bit more costly than they anticipated. So having a tenant or a landlord not specify every dollar
is not the end of the world. It's not a correct expectation to have.
It's reasonable, yeah.
I think this is important to understand, though. In most jurisdictions, if the landlord doesn't give you that disposition or a reconciliation of your deposit within that 30 days, that you can actually sue the landlord or the homeowner. In our jurisdiction, it's treble damages. So if your deposit was $1,000, you're entitled up to $3,000 in compensatory.
There's a process for that.
There is a process. You have to go through court to do that.
But if I'm not mistaken, I think the tenant has to actually provide a letter in writing.
Correct.
After the 30 days saying they don't have it, they have to wait another 5 or 7 days.
Yeah, they have to give reasonable notice to receive that.
To not receive, if you haven't received or a response by the landlord, and then you can proceed.
Yeah. I think this too is also a thing that people overlook. The landlord is not obligated to give you that unless you've provided them a forwarding address.
Correct.
In most jurisdictions.
Right, yeah.
Right, and so a lot of times people say, well, I don't want to give him my forwarding address because I think he's going to come after me for more because I know my dog did business on the carpet downstairs. I'm not going to disclose it, right? Whatever they try to hide something.
Yeah.
And so they don't want the landlord to know where they're at. Well, in the digital age, everybody knows where you're at.
They're going to find you.
Yeah, you will be found. And so I think is part of the objective of Tenant Solutions is how do we equip or arm our subscribers, our listeners, I guess, with the best information possible. And every time it comes down to communication and being upfront, right?
Disclose too.
Yep, and disclose.
If you've got something you're hiding, probably not the best.
I know when my tenant tells me something, I'm going to work my hardest to make it as least expensive for them as I possibly can. There are some landlords out there that try and nickel and dime every tenant for everything. I mean, I know there's one that charges $8 for a light bulb. It's like, really, $8? But I can see some justification to an aspect. But really, just being mindful of the time frame to get your deposit back is that 30 days, and communicating and providing your forwarding address information.
I think a tenant's actually supposed to. Like,
yes,
they need to. I wouldn't be afraid of doing that. I would encourage full disclosure and communicating and working through things with a landlord. But you're right. I mean, there might be circumstances you don't want to. Maybe the landlord's a creepy guy and you just don't want to give him any information. Well,
get a P.O. box.
You want your deposit back. That's actually fine. Or a sibling's address or parent or something like that, whatever it is. But they need to have a way to
communicate it.
Communicate, and they're going to most likely send a check in the mail with a letter of a breakdown of the costs. I think they're required.
They're required to do that.
That. So you know exactly where the expenses went.
Excuse me.
And then can they fight it if they didn't get as much as they were hoping, or they can dispute that breakdown at all? Can they go to court?
There's a recourse.
Really the only way to do that. But
there's a recourse through the small claims system. In our jurisdiction, the courts are very even-handed in that. I think the tenants actually have a pretty strong case if they can show that was normal wear and tear versus negligence on their part. So there's a ways out there.
All right.
So I encourage you to just be mindful of what to expect as you're leaving.
So expect 30 days. I think in general rule of thumb, when you're vacating, just expect to have your deposit within 30 days. There's technicalities between the time you check out and when you get that back, or haven't heard about it. But if you need more help on that, let us know. We'll be glad to get involved and help you out a little bit.
We'd love to hear some of your experiences that you've had.
Yeah, good or bad.
Yep.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.